As talent availability is beginning to open up a little bit, it's time to start thinking about how we will go get and keep the talented employees that will help us succeed. Stay tuned to hear what has worked for me and those I help.
Running a service business can be hard. It is not unusual for business owners in industries like contracting, home repair, auto repair, business-to-business services like janitorial, IT and accounting, and many others to feel overwhelmed by all the priorities facing them at any given time. Between addressing the needs of the customers, managing the employees, figuring out the financials, and getting processes in place, feeling like you're making significant progress on your business journey can be difficult. Welcome to Service Industry Success, hosted by Brian Harding. Each week, Brian will look at real-world strategies for building the business you are dreaming of, while also sharing tactics to get through some of the most frustrating parts of business ownership with a lot more ease. Let's get started.
So I believe, as probably most of you do, that good employees are absolutely the lifeblood of any successful company. The saying, a chain is only as good as the weakest link, absolutely applies in my opinion with businesses. It will literally be impossible to beat the competition and build a thriving company without having a great team. And great teams are made up of talented people. Almost all 5-star reviews are centered around the actions of an employee, and almost all 1-star reviews are due to actions or inactions of one or more employees. In my opinion, based on having great teams to lead and also going through times where I was like trying to get the B team shaped up and in order, the single greatest differentiator for a service company is the quality of the employees. I truly believe this. I don't think it can be understated. I would rank the quality of employees higher than the quality of leadership and many other things. Specifically, the reason I'd rank it higher than leadership is talented teams can still be successful with less than great leadership. But great leadership cannot fix teams with no talent. Now, obviously, the ideal situation is to have both. But if I had to choose, I would take the talent over the long run. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about things we already know. But now that hiring is getting a little bit easier, it's time to start thinking about how we can make real improvements on our team when the time comes. Like we've not been able to do that in some cases over the last few years. And now that in some places, in some industries, in some instances, you can start, it's beginning to change. There are talented people out there looking for work again. Where, 2 years ago, I couldn't have said that with a high degree of confidence for sure. By the way, if you're still struggling with hiring, I want you to check out my webinar I did on it's been like 2-3 years now. I did this webinar and I still get more people happy. I shouldn't, that's not the right way to say it. There's more people who let me know how I've helped them with this free webinar than just about anything I've ever done for free, for sure. So if you're still struggling with hiring, check out freehiringwebinar.com. I'll tell you a quick story. Andy is a guy, he owns a window cleaning company. He did a Facebook post for me here not long ago. He averaged, for a long time, like 2 or 3 people to his first interview, which was a group interview. And after watching the freehiringwebinar.com, the video on there, he made the changes I recommended in the webinar, and he had over 50 people come to his next group interview just from the changes that we did in that free hiring webinar. I wasn't even involved. He did it on the webinar without me. So if you want to learn exactly how Andy and others have gone from struggling with the hire to quickly attracting top talent, go to freehiringwebinar.com. So I want to mention that this episode because it's certainly applicable. And again, of all the things I've done for free, that one, more people are get better results from that than just about anything. So one of the biggest, if not the biggest mistakes we make at hiring, in my opinion, is asking about things we can teach, but not asking about things we can't teach. This, in my opinion, is what leads to most employee-employer separations. The more of a job a position is, the more I'll allow myself to focus on skills. So if I need a receptionist, if I need a person that, a dispatcher kind of a thing in a blue collar company, admin kind of thing in a white collar company, okay, I'll consider their skills. But the more of a career this position is, the more I force myself to focus on things I can't teach. So if I'm not hiring the dispatcher, I'm hiring the journeyman plumber or I'm hiring the journeyman electrician, or I'm hiring the CPA, or I'm hiring the supervisor or manager, the more of a career position this is, the more I force myself to focus on things I can't teach, like values. With younger managers, I used to use the analogy of a married couple. If you have a married couple and one of them believes in open marriage and the other one does not, what kind of car they drive doesn't really matter anymore. Where the kids go to school doesn't really matter anymore. What kind of house they live in doesn't really matter anymore. What the husband does for a living and what the wife does for a living doesn't really matter anymore in the context of the success of the marriage. If the values don't line up, then very few other things really matter. It's the same way with hiring, in my opinion. Yes, of course, we want somebody who has all the skills, but if their values don't align with mine, the skills don't matter anymore. It just, and I think that that's something that, again, the last few years we haven't had the ability to be as selective as we'd like. And some of these things had to go to the wayside, and I totally get that. We're coming out of that though. So we need to get back to focusing when we want to talk about hiring and retaining top talent. Part of the retention part for top talent is, do their values align with ours? And if the answer is no, then we're going to hire somebody who seems like great talent, who's not going to be great talent because their values don't align with ours. And that's what really matters, right? So I believe we can teach an employee to do any technical thing we need done, from answering the phone, a multi-phone line phone system, to installing the most complicated HVAC system on top of a skyscraper. We can teach them any of that stuff. I cannot teach anybody to be a good person. I can't teach them to be on time. I can't teach them to value the customer's happiness. I can't teach them to be coachable. Again, I know we've not been able to be as selective as we'd like for the last few years, so some of these things have not been possible to the degree we'd like. But that's beginning to change. I know we just want to. I want to emphasize that I would hope that we don't, like this last few years we've gone through, become like the new way we do things, because we had to. We had to. Now we don't have to. So let's go back to the right way of doing things, which is answering some of these questions first, then getting to skills, or if we get to skills at all. If a journeyman plumber shows up and says, I have this certification, I don't need to quiz him on how well he knows the stuff. If a CPA shows up to my firm and is applying for a job, I don't need to quiz them on how well they know the stuff. Now, if they're a fraud, I'll find out pretty quickly, but the likelihood of that's pretty low. The likelihood that their values won't line with mine, much higher, I would say. And that would be way higher in the priority list for me. So again, I want to focus on things in the interview process and attracting people based on things I cannot teach. Our values, our drivers, are we in alignment on, do we have the same understanding of, for example, the level of service we need to, how much we serve a client versus how much they should appreciate what we offer? That one little nugget there, that one little thought, if our employees don't agree with us on that, like if we have the perspective as a business owner and manager that we're out there providing and we're serving people, and I hire this person who says, yeah, that's old school thinking. I'm much more in the camp of the customer should be pretty appreciative of them out there fixing the thing. That one little thing cannot be overcome, in my opinion, by any amount of technical skill. And if I can't figure that out in the interview, then I will, based on my experience, I will end up with people who don't share my vision on that, and they will create problems for me and my customers. So that's why I ask about that stuff now. So anyhow, things I want to know before hiring: what are their drivers? What are their values? What do they think good customer service is? What will tell them they did a good job? What does being coachable look like, and why does it matter? Again, if they don't know that kind of stuff, then I've got to I got to figure that out first before I get on to how well they solder the thing or how well they do the tax return. So those things I want to know at hire, and then here's some things I want to know at hire, but I also want to continue to learn all the time. Just like our customers' buying criteria and decisions change, so too do our employee criteria for keeping a job and what tells them they're moving their career in the right direction or the direction that they want to. So the first thing I'm asking myself all the time, and if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you've heard me say this probably dozens of times by now. The first thing I'm asking myself as it relates to employees, nearly every step of the way, is what's in it for them. Big ideas, big concepts, like what's in it for them to work in this industry? What's in it for them to work in this industry, making this $25 an hour, instead of working in that industry, making that $25 an hour? If I don't have an answer to that, I've got a problem. Once they've decided to work in our industry, then what's in it for them to work at our company instead of brand X, who is paying them about the same? Again, if it's a 20% or more differential, then okay, I would look at that. 5 or 10%, maybe. But generally speaking, people are we're companies are pretty close, right? So what's in it for them to work here instead of brand X at that company and we're paying about the same? We both say we have a great culture. We both say we have an open door policy, whatever that means. We both say we have a great team, whatever that means. We both say we really care about our employees and their families. What's in it for them to work here and for this $25 an hour instead of there for that $25 an hour? If I don't have an answer to that, I got a problem. What's in it for them to do this thing besides I told them to? Or explain to them adamantly and fervently, this is what the customer needs, and therefore that's what I need you to do. Like, what's in it for them to do this thing? Right? If our answer is, well, that's what they get a paycheck for, okay, I think we've got a problem there, right? If I can't connect the dots on how doing this thing helps them get something they want, then I've got a problem. Like many times it's as simple as like they want to be an expert. Okay, well, you can't be an expert if you fix the HVAC unit really well, but you communicate like crap. You can't be an expert and do that, right? Sometimes they want to be the hero. Okay, well, you can't be the hero if you won't call people and tell them you're on the way if you're going to their house. So there's these things that we want done that sometimes we struggle with. And I don't know if I don't know what's in it for them to do these things, then I got a problem, right? Next thing is I'm asking myself is what do they want? And here's a hint. We often overestimate how much it's about money. Even if it is about money, it's not hardly ever about the money. It's almost always about what the money buys. The people I've known who are driven most in life by money, it wasn't like they laid on, it wasn't like the Scrooge McDuck thing where they're laying on their mattress full of cash. They wanted the money because it represented status, or they got to travel, or they got to put their kids through college, or they got to have a fancy car, they get to have a nice house in a nice neighborhood, a safe neighborhood, whatever it is. It's what the money bought that they really wanted. It's not about the money. And if I don't understand that, I got a little bit of a problem. Maybe they want status and respect from their. So again, we overestimate the money part. So in many cases, it's not about money at all. They want the status and respect of their peers. They want stability. They want to be known as being competent or an expert. They want people to look up to them, right? So sometimes that's what they want. What do they value? Again, we tend to think it's about money. It's generally not. We tend to miss that. And I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but I think part of the reason that happens is because the money thing is a quick, easy thing. It may not be convenient. We may not like it, but it's quick and easy. And I can get this off my list of things to worry about with relatively little effort. It's way harder to figure out what they really care about, what they really value. But it's very common nowadays for people to value time off much more than they would a raise or a cash bonus. An extra day off is probably, let's say you're $25 an hour, an 8-hour day, it's what, $200. If you give them the choice between here's a $200 cash bonus for doing this thing or a day off, most of them nowadays would take the day off. That's a little different than it was 15, 20 years ago. So I need to know what they value though, because otherwise with many of these things, if I'm talking about like retaining and acquiring great talent, what I don't want to be doing is like grabbing a dart and putting a blindfold on and throwing the dart, trying to hit the right thing on the dartboard. Why don't I just ask them, like, what do you care about? What do you like? What do you value? It's so much easier for me. And again, I'm a selfish guy. So it's so much easier for me to do the thing that they want by just asking them, what do you want? Rather than saying, well, geez, if I gave them $65, that might really like that. But if I gave them $45, they might think that's not enough. And that might actually make things worse. And well, maybe I should give them a gift card. I don't know. How about I just ask them? What kinds of things would tell you that you're being recognized for doing a good job? And I stop talking and I see what they say. Right. So again, I need to know what they value though. It's rarely about money, but there's things that they do value. There's no question. It's almost always about some kind of solid, respectful relationship with their direct supervisor or manager. That's what determines if they stay or go. That has not changed. We went through a little bit of a blip with COVID and the PPP stuff and the wages going up, 10% every 3 months for a while or whatever it was. Things got a little skewed there for a while, but that period of time aside, and we're kind of getting back to more normal and have been for quite a while now. Um, it's the solid, respectful relationship with the direct supervisor that they really care about in many cases. That's what they value. Is not being, it's kind of cliche, but it's still kind of true. I don't want to be seen as a number. I don't want to just be a cog in the machine of getting the business owner rich. That's not fulfilling. I'm sorry, it's just not. So what do they really want instead? Let's ask them that. What do they fear? That's another question I want to ask. Universally, I'll just give you one that we tend to not appreciate as much as we could in certain circumstances. Universally, they fear looking stupid. One of the things that I did a whole I may have done a whole podcast about this, but I did a whole video on this one time where people, because one of the common frustrations is, why don't they just ever speak up and say they don't know how to do a thing? Why will they sit there in the meeting? We have a training meeting, or we have our weekly meeting, whatever, and they don't know how to do a thing. They know they don't know how to do a thing. They don't say anything when I ask them, this is the time, tell me if you don't know how to do this. They don't do it, and they go and do it wrong. Why would they do that? And the answer is, in many cases, they don't want to look stupid. The last thing they want to do is, to the person who runs the company or owns the company or their peers, say, yeah, you guys probably understand this, but I don't. They just don't want to do that. They're very fearful of that. They fear uncertainty in many cases in their career, their financial stability, their ability to provide for their family, like whatever. So those are the kinds of things that they would fear. I also want to know, like, what do they understand and not understand? We all want to know what's going on, what to do, and how to be better. And if they don't care about those things, by the way, they should go. They should go be somebody else's problem. But in order to know what's going on, what to do, and how to be better, I need to understand certain things. What do they understand and not understand that would help them facilitate that getting better and doing the right thing and knowing what to do and how to do and all that kind of stuff? And I'm going to try to say this correctly, and I struggle with my enunciation a little bit, so I hope this comes through clearly. They can't possibly know the things they don't know that they are supposed to know any more than I can. There's a saying, like, I don't know what I don't know. That's true for all of us. There's things we don't know that we don't know. We don't know the things that we don't know. That's very true for them. It's not reasonable to expect that to be different for them than it is for us. So these are the kinds of questions I ask, but more importantly, what are the answers to these questions for your group? Like for your team? What do they want? What do they value? What do they fear? What are they, what are they trying to be? What tells them that they've been successful? These are the kinds of things that if I know this stuff, I can compete on an entirely different, let me rephrase that. I did compete on an entirely different level versus Brand X. The awesome employees we had were not because we paid 20% more than Brand X. In some cases, we paid less than Brand X. But I knew this stuff. And I knew the stuff that my team really cared about. And I knew what was in it for them to do certain things. There were lots of things, many things. I knew why they had this job instead of a different one. This is the stuff that helped me be way more competitive than I could if I just sat back and, well, they should want to do a good job. And here's a paycheck and open door policy. I just don't think those things are very compelling. So again, these are the kinds of questions I ask. Again, the most important thing, though, is like, what are the answers to these questions for your group? So you can go back and listen to this podcast, obviously, as many times as you want. There's these are the kinds of questions I ask. So to be competitive and to attract talent, literally grab the best talent from other companies that came to my company and ran the company so I could only work 3 days a week. This is how I did it. This is exactly the path. This is exactly the path I help my clients with now, is answering these questions, and the talent will find us in many cases. So like many things, the first step is just to be intentional about doing this stuff. And if we're focused on the things that really matter to the employee, which are things that most employers completely overlook or take for granted, we have a very good chance of finding, hiring, and keeping top talent, in my opinion. And in my experience, not just my opinion. Let me retract that. In my experience. So don't forget, if you want to quickly learn and easily learn how Andy, the window cleaning business owner, and others have gone from struggling to hire to quickly finding and attracting top talent, go to freehiringwebinar.com. It's about an hour long. It's free. You have to put in your email address. Don't worry, I don't spam you. And you can unsubscribe whenever you want. Just go to freehiringwebinar.com. And as usual, if you find the information I share here helpful, please share this podcast with a friend or colleague you think could benefit. And of course, public sharing is also appreciated. That's it for this week, and I'll talk to you all next week.